Oh, wow. Nice to be here. It's Wednesday, November 6th. I can't believe it. Pretty soon I'll be saying January 6th, then February 6th, and so on. And then I'm going to want, it's 2020. I don't know what else to say. Why is it 2019 is over? And as for me, I can't wait. Frankly, this has been one of the most challenging years. 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Down to Earth with Harriet Cammock. It's the show in which we talk about the issues that matter. And today we are going to explore why is there a global fertility crash? And I know that everybody is you're going to this and you're going to want to know what is a global fertility crash and why are we having one? But if you think about it, when you think about how many children do you and I have, and you look at your relatives, and some of you are like, I don't know about that, Harriet. Some of my relatives have 5 to 6 to 9 kids. Am I saying anything here? I didn't call any names. I didn't point any fingers, right? But why is there a global fertility crash? And the truth of the matter is that something is going on in our populations around the world. Something is going on where we're probably not doing what we should do. Tongue in cheek. So we're going to talk about that. But first, yesterday was election day across the country, wasn't it? And you're all like, oh, right? So yesterday was election day. My good friend in Flint, Karen Weaver, lost her seat to a worthy gentleman. I don't think she wanted it anymore. I think she felt burnt out. The public spectacle that her life had become was just wearing on her. She didn't have the fight. She was just kind of, okay, let it go, whatever. So I want to know, why is there a global fertility crash? And the answer is a complex situation of answers. I mean, it's really quite complex. And we here in the Western world, and I want to say shout out to all my viewers. Thank you so much for viewing our broadcast. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in. You make me feel good. I feel like I can brag on you all. You all give me bragging rights, like seriously. Like, I just want to say thank you. Yesterday I was in the nail shop. I was getting doing some self-care. Don't judge me. We all need some self-care. And there was a Judge Judy episode and a young man was trying to explain to Judge Judy that he live streams for a living. And she was beyond it. I mean, she was, because the way in which he did it, he was doing it when he goes on a date. And she's trying to understand what's with this generation, always putting everything out there. And I felt good because his, as much as he has a lot of folks and so on, his numbers didn't even compare to mine. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. I felt like I had bragging rights. You should have seen me in the nail shop. I literally sat there and was batting my eyelashes. You can't see them right now. But I was literally, just like totally feeling myself, So I want to tell you thank you, because you do make me proud. You do give me something to feel good about. And I want you to take it one step further by downloading and subscribing to my podcast, Down to Earth. It's available on Spotify as well as on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. Just look for Down to Earth if you have your cell phones with you. Apple has a neat little purple-looking icon in an app that looks like, radio waves coming off it. Well, that's the Apple Podcast. Just go in it, and as soon as you say Down to Earth, I'm going to pop up. It's like just popping up right there. If you have an Android phone, then in your Google store, go to Google Podcasts. It has some lines going through it that looks like lines, like people communicating or whatever. And just click on that, and that will bring you right to my podcast. So I thank you for subscribing. And of course, we live stream on YouTube and Twitter and Periscope. And I just want to say thank you to all of you. I feel really good. Yeah, I feel the love. But so you made me feel proud. So yesterday was quite the day. Was quite the day around here. I had quite the adventure because I needed some self-care and I went to do the girl thing, right? Still have some more to do. What I do is I break it up so that every day I do a little bit of self-care. We all should, because sometimes life gets full. I mean, you don't have to be a broadcaster or a podcaster. You don't have to be a writer. Hey, right? The topic today is the global fertility crash, right? Somebody wants to know the global fertility crash. Yeah, and I want you to talk about it, right? I want you to say something about it. But you don't have to be a public person for life not to get to you. Stuff happens, right? Stuff just happens. So everyone, every day, you should take some time to just do a little self-care. So I did the me thing. And I break it up. So there's still more to do. Tomorrow I'll do the hair part. The next day I'll go do the facials and so on. I do my own facials at home and I've been doing them for a while. You don't know what it is? Well, thank you for stopping by. We're going to talk about the global fertility crash. So while I was doing that, and then I went and got some chocolate and, the usual works and stuff like that. It helps. Self-care is very important, right? So I was scrolling through my feed yesterday and I came across a story. As usual, as you know, I read, right? I read a lot, right? And sometimes I don't think I read enough. I really don't read as much as I want to, right? Your mind is incredibly retentive. Do you know that? Do you know why some people are considered smart? They're considered smart because they have the ability to retain information. I think what we have all done to ourselves is we have dumbed ourselves down in terms of allowing ourselves to only retain information that's not important. Like they fill our timelines with stuff on entertainment. Who cares about what people live and do like? What you really want is knowledge, because knowledge is what? Powerful and empowering. The more knowledge you have, it sets you apart. Sometimes it's scary for others, especially if you're applying for a job, but it turns out you know more than the person who is hiring you or the person whom you're going to report to. But knowledge is empowering, and knowledge builds your confidence and makes you feel more confident so you can entertain more, you can talk to more people. So I don't think I read enough, but I was reading the story on the global fertility crash. And ladies and gentlemen, did it shock me? You bet it did. I was like, what on earth are you talking about? Because as far as I'm concerned, people are having babies like crazy. I mean, any visit to any hospital, maternity ward, if you've ever been to the baby places, the baby registry, and just by scrolling through your Facebook and Instagram feed, they don't do it a lot on Twitter, but Facebook and Instagram, people are just loaded with baby shower and gender reveal parties. I mean, just the other day, somebody out somewhere in Kansas, I think, was having a gender reveal party and a family member died because they did an explosion thingy that was designed to explode to show that it was going to be a boy, but the thing went off and someone died. And I was like, haven't they taken this a little too far? Well, it turns out there is a global fertility crash. And what they're saying is that women today, we're apparently not having children. And look who is talking, I had to say. We're apparently not having as many children as we should, as we used to. In the 1950s, the average woman had, a woman had an average of 5.1 children. This is what this report says, right? But today, we're having like 2.4. Population requirements, and for the race to continue, for the human race to continue, requires that we should have 2.1. So at 2.4, we are barely there. And especially in developing countries. So what they're saying now is that immigration, right, is helping developed countries like the United States and Western Europe to continue. But still, we're still not having as many children as we should. So they looked at some other countries, right? And I'm going to give you some examples that's going to highlight this for you. Many of us know that China had the one-child policy for maybe about 30, 40 years. You remember that? That you could only have one child, that people in China could only have one child, and that child had to be male. We don't want to speculate what happened in China, because maybe someday I'll go to China. you don't want to hear that I don't come back, right? So because they do stuff like that. China is weird like that. They're weird, right? They don't human rights. What are those? Rights? Human? They cut people open in China. They gut people open and take their organs out while they're still alive and harvest their organs. So China is weird. So in China, they had a one-child policy for decades, and that one-child policy was only males. So if people had female children, some people had to kill them, or they hid them. People used to hide their children, make them grow up like boys until it was too late, especially out in the rural areas, or they would run to the countryside. Well, guess what? Like we all knew that was going to backfire, and it backfired on China. So now China has eliminated that one-child policy. And having rescinded it, they now recognize that if they don't do something about their population, they won't have enough people in the country. Now, why is it important to have a group of people in your country? Why? Tell me. You won't have workers. And if you don't have workers, they won't pay taxes. And if they don't pay taxes, goods and services won't run. So this is a nay for the people who say, well, if it's just a few of us and it's just a few of us here, we can do everything. No, apparently you need a whole lot of people to be able to work in different sectors of your society to keep the engines of your society going. So for all the people out there who think, and y'all are watching me on this, for all the people out there who think you can only have one group of people, the rest of us have been laughing because this fact that we do know, it takes everybody to make it happen. So when they were jumping up and having rallies and marches that, don't bring in the people and don't bring in that, but the rest of us were like, are you kidding me? You need everybody to keep it going. As a matter of fact, since we stopped, since the rush of people coming across the border have stopped, and most people who came here without documentation, have you guys noticed that the highways is done? I mean, you don't have any landscaping on the highways. You go into restaurants now and you have a long wait because all the Latin cooks are gone. And the food tastes horribly in most restaurants because the people who could cook are no longer there. I kid you not, it's happening. If you don't believe me, go eat out. And you're like, why am I waiting so long? And why does the food taste different? It never used to taste like this. Ooh, I'm not coming back to this restaurant. That's because the Latin cooks are all gone. And if you're wondering why you can't find good housekeepers, and if you go to the hotel, when you go to the hotel and you wonder why the sheets haven't been changed, not that most hotels, they don't really change their sheets often, but now you're like, why is the landscaping so bad? Why is the laundry not done? Why I sent my clothes down to the laundry and it's 2 days later and I have to leave tomorrow and it's still not ready? That's because the people who used to do that kind of work, they're no longer there. They're gone, right? Okay. And then here in America in particular, white and black Americans don't do menial jobs. White and black Americans do not like menial jobs. So do you see now why it takes all people to keep the sectors of the economy going? That was the fact why the rest of us were looking on like, who doesn't get this? Like, are you really kidding me right here? Are you serious? Right? So now we have a fertility problem because now more women are going to work. And when we go to work, here's the thing. You're pressured at work not to have children. Right? So you are pressured women are pressured not to have children. If we become pregnant, any woman who has ever been pregnant knows the first 3 months are crucial. That's when you get sick and that's when you feel nauseous. And it's also the time when you're most likely to have a miscarriage. So what happens is a lot, and I'm saying this because you guys need to know this. You have girlfriends, you have wives, you have sisters. So when you hear it from me, you will listen more than when she tells you. So now you see the broad-based problem that it is. So because we're being pressured not to, if you get pregnant, you lose your place in the hierarchy, right? You get pregnant and you go off on maternity leave. They assign your job to someone else. When you come back, it's not the same. If you come back, because sometimes the pregnancy keeps you out for 9 months. And then after that, finding childcare in the United States is horrendously expensive. Horrendously, tremendously expensive. So expensive, it's almost prohibitive for working families to have children and to pay for childcare. Invariably, somebody ends up staying home because you're working literally to pay for childcare. Childcare in the United States for an infant, a child who is just born, from 0 to 5 months, 0 to 6 months, is almost, in most cases, is $850 a month. That's like 2 car notes, right? So you have car note, mortgage or rent, mortgage/rent plus childcare. People are like, I can't afford that. That is what is contributing to the global fertility crash, right? So, and then, of course, here in the US, we don't have paid paternity leave. So let's say the child is born, right? If the mother can take off for more than 3 weeks, because you're still in a delicate state after a child is born, where I grew up, we used to stay home for 3 months because that's what they thought was enough time for you to bond with a child and for you to restore, for your body to be restored. They were thinking like that. Today, it's like you drop the baby out, you better come back to work tomorrow, otherwise you won't have a job. So people are like, I want to keep my job because I need my job to pay my bills, so people do not get pregnant. So women don't get pregnant. So the onus is on us. So for all of those people out there who hate women, there is a reason why you hate women. You really do, because we are who carry the human race. If we don't get pregnant and have a baby, they're no human beings. That's why some people hate women, because no matter how they dress like a woman, put on the lipstick, that stuff, and put in the fake breasts and put in the fake butts, you still can't carry a child. And if you don't care, we are the continuance of the human race. Let me hear what folks are saying. That's not true. It's actually a law. You can't be fired. And welcome to the world of reality. They find reasons to fire you, hon. You do know that, right? Right. Okay. So you do know there are ways that people circumvent employment laws all the time, right? So they can't fire you because you're pregnant. And that's why people file lawsuits. But they can fire you that you don't perform, that you don't come to work on time. It is a condition of the pregnancy. So people go back. It's not always that you're fired. It's the case that you get so sick, you are displaced out of the workforce. You see what I'm saying? Because you get sick, and because of there's no consideration for the fact that pregnancy is a temporary condition. It's not long term. So you're going to be pregnant only for 9 months. During that 9 months, your health is going to be impacted by the pregnancy. And because of that, you actually will end up not coming to work, especially in the first 3 months, then in the later months. And then you have to take some time off. Most people take time off after 7 months to go have the baby. And then after the baby is born. Years ago, it used to be, okay, you get pregnant, go home, have the baby, come back when it's done. Now it's like, okay, fine. Then employers replace someone else. They replace someone else. There are discrimination laws, right, that protect you, but it still happens. Ask any woman who's been pregnant. How long can you be home after birth? 3 weeks. A friend of mine, I can't disclose too much, but she was a high-ranking person in an agency, right? And you would have thought that being assistant to right, would have prevented her. She had a problematic second pregnancy. And because she knew the pressure that she was under, she was trying to stay on the job until the day of birth. She was in the courtroom. And the judge told her, you need to go now because you have turned green. And truth be told, by the time she walked out of the courtroom and was calling her husband, she fainted. They had to take her to the hospital right away, and there came the baby. It was a problematic pregnancy and a problematic birth. So she took 2 months off. By the time she returned to work, they had someone else functioning as acting in her position. It took her 2 years before she never got back that position. They gave her something similar. So tell me again that doesn't happen. The law allows 9 weeks for women and men. In the United States, 9 weeks? Really? 3 weeks, I know. So show me the law that says 9 weeks. Right? So these are the factors that are contributing to the global. Show me the law. Cite the law. Cite the federal law that gives 9 weeks to women to stay home after a baby. Cite the law. No, don't just do that. Cite me the law. Show me the law. Right? Obama signed the law. Obama signed a lot of laws that have not been enacted, that were torn down, that have not been enacted. There are a lot of laws. Right? So show me the law. Right? So what happens now, and we can go back and forth about how many weeks people should stay home and so on. Only 6, and men don't have babies. I wish. I think you know what I think? I think men should, the day that a man finally gets pregnant, we will never complain again. You know why? They will fix everything, because I guarantee you, until you walk around in it, you can't know what it feels like, right? And so the pressures that are in advanced societies like this prevent women from wanting to get pregnant. Most women lose their footing in their careers. Like I told you about my friend, it took 2 years before they gave her a similar position. When she returned to work, her position was being occupied by someone else. There was nothing she could do about it. She's a lawyer. She was functioning in an agency of the government. I can't disclose what her title is, right? And these things continue to happen. You have women who lead teams and who are team leaders and who have positions. And when you get pregnant, you don't just stay home. You know, most people function that way, and they can stay there if you find an employer who is likely to be accommodating. I read one story of a woman in France for whom it worked beautifully, but that is not true of every situation. I kid you not. Have you ever thought about the people who work in retail jobs and the people who work, for instance, at McDonald's, the women who work at McDonald's and so on, and who work at AutoZone, and all the retail interactions that we have on a daily basis? The women who are salespeople when you go to take your car in, right? Have you ever thought about what happened to them? Oh, men are allowed under the law for helping the birth mother. We can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford it in the United States. We just don't want to do it. Men should be entitled to paternity leave. If you're a new father, or if this is your 3rd or 4th time, men, if they want to, men should be given the option to stay home with their babies, their newborn babies, if they want to. I think that should happen. In other countries, in other first world countries like Sweden and Finland and Denmark, this is the norm. Men get paternity leave and they stay home and help with the baby. So let's say the mother stays home for the first 6 weeks, the first 3 to 4 weeks. Most people combine their leave, right? I read one story. Men are not allowed to stay home. I don't know about that. We don't have paternity leave in the United States. I don't know about that. I have to check with my lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that it doesn't happen, right? That's what the guy from Reddit is pushing for. He was in Capitol Hill just this week, pushing for that, wasn't it? Right. The Reddit co-founder, isn't that what Alexis Ohanian, isn't that what he was trying to do? Right? Okay. So there you have it. So what I'm saying is, if men should, why shouldn't you guys stay home if you want to? You have a newborn baby. So let's say you're married, right? So the mother stays home for the first 3 to 4 weeks. Then dad stays home for at least 3 weeks. That helps not just with bonding, but that also helps financially. I read a story. One of the stories I read was about a woman who is a lawyer, and she worked in a government agency. And I'm not talking about the one that I personally know of. This is someone I know, right? Whom this happened to. I know of another person who works for another government. I can't tell. I can't say. They will know. You will know, right? And this person, this story I was reading, she was a lawyer. She worked in Kansas or something like that. And where she worked in Kansas, it was crazy. It was because she's a lawyer, she earned like 60,000 a year. You know how that works. Okay. Because she works for the state government, and she couldn't afford to take time off. When she took time off, she couldn't afford to stay home long. She had to go get back to work. And when she got back to work, she had to take another position. This happens to women. It sounds like most of you got. I have 6 children, and my wife could only stay home. My job only gave me 3 days. Thank you. Right? So the thing I'm saying is, this is what is contributing to the global fertility crash. Now, in some ethnic groups, for instance, amongst Hispanics, they have a different outlook. How they do it is the mother stays home with the children until they're past 10. So she has one child, she waits. When they're all at a certain age, by the time they're 8 and 10, that's when she goes back to work. But in those early 3, 4, 5 months, 6, 7, 8 month olds, a year old, 2 years old, they stay home with their children. Now, in other parts of the world, like I was talking about China, one woman said, and I was amazed to read this, that China is now actually has women's rights and now recognize women's rights and anti-discrimination rights. I'm like, wow, it's time to move into the 21st century, huh? And she said that she was leading a team, and she was like an assistant vice president in a company. And when she got pregnant, the pregnancy, she took some time off, and when she went back to work, they actually fired her, right? And she had to sue to get compensation. Now, in America, you can sue, but how many women really do that? Ask the women who work in retail. Ask the women who work at TJ Maxx and Burlington Coat Factory and Macy's and Saks Fifth Avenue. You ever wonder why you see a certain age group working these jobs? Because younger women can't work those jobs and have children. Because the minute you start having children, it puts a strain on your finances. Today, in most parts of the country, there are no such thing as benefits. When they tell you they're offering you health insurance, the health insurance is unbelievable. You pay more for it, right? But they still say they're giving you jobs. That's what they are. They're jabs at your standard of living. These are the issues. Now, in other parts of the world, like they studied the same thing that's happening in the US is happening in Britain and most first world countries. What is happening in Nigeria, of course, people just have children. And the children just grow up. But what are the resources that the society has to offer those children? Do you see where I'm coming from? So when they look at it in Japan, for instance, they're looking at, we need to provide more incentives so women can stay home and have children. Why? For population purposes. So what you're finding then is that you'll find a whole lot of people. This is what you're seeing now. A whole lot of people are living in the urban areas, and people are not living in the rural areas. That's why they're giving us manufactured foods, because there are no farms. You know, you have weather conditions. We've been planting on the same land for 100 years. We haven't let the land lie fallow, so it resuscitates. We just keep planting. So we put chemicals on the land, it goes in the water, and then it affects all our health. And then people are not being farmers anymore because it's not productive. You have your crops. Last year when they had they had to give farmers subsidies, and farmers get a lot of subsidies. Guess what happened? They lost a lot of milk. They were pouring milk down the drain. I was saying there are a lot of homeless shelters across the country. We could find places where we could put that. America has always tried to impose their standards on other countries. What is wrong with that, though? If we have a good standard that is good for others, what's wrong with that? What do you think is wrong with that? What is wrong with America? If it is good, what is wrong with getting other countries to see it? What you're saying is that it may not work for their society? Okay, depending on what's going on in their society. Is that it? Is that your argument? Okay, I can see that. But I think because we tend to have access to more information and we do more research, we tend to think that it is good, it is better for you. Maybe it's the messaging and the delivery that is off, because maybe what we should say, it would be better if you do this. But the thing is, we still are facing a population deficit, though. We still are facing a population deficit. In other words, what I'm saying is, one group of most people are not having enough children. And if we're not, then we're not. Let me remind you of something. Do you remember? I think it was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it's now 2019. Maybe it was 2017, when there was this immigration crisis in Europe. Remember when people were leaving Africa and trying to get into Europe? Okay, we need to talk about that. Let me explain what happened there. Well, what countries like Germany, we're talking about that immigration crisis that took place in Europe. Countries like Germany were looking at a shrinking population. You need to get the facts, right? They were looking at a shrinking population. So people who were coming from Syria, we remember when the Syrian war was at its peak, and people were leaving Syria like crazy, okay? And people were leaving Syria like it was unbelievable. Like I wanted to cry. We all sat back and were dismayed. Well, what Germany was looking at, their population had shrunk for many reasons. People were not having as many children because we had become so progressive. Women were not staying home to have children like we used to, right? And so what happened is that people began now, Germany started looking at immigrants as, you know what? If they come in, they work, they contribute and pay taxes, our society will sustain itself. What happens is most of us don't think of it like that. You know what we look at? We look at, I want to protect it for me and my two, me and my four, and the people who look like me. And if the people who are coming in don't look like me, then I don't want them. Part of what we're seeing in America today is that people are not migrating from Europe because Europe is stable and Europe is settled. They're on equal par with the standard of living that we have here. So they don't need to leave European countries to come here. The people who are coming here are brown and black. They're coming from countries where they can't sustain themselves. We don't want that. That's part of our problem. We want people who look blonde, blue-eyed, or white with dark eyes, but light eyes, or whatever they call it. Do you see what I'm saying? And those people are staying in Europe. And the population is shrinking because people in the last 40 or 50 years, I'm female. I sit right in the midst of this conversation. I only have 2 children. Do you know why? It was expensive. That was a decision that I made, that I could not afford to have children. It took time off from work. It meant that I had to pay. Childcare was horrendously expensive, right? And it meant that I would have to. So I spent most of my childbearing years telling myself, we're not going down this road. And that's the case for a lot of women. And then we end up later on and we're like, dang, maybe we should have rethought this. But at the time, you had to save money, then taking care of children. Do you know that it costs, from a child is born until it's 18, it costs $1 million to raise that child? Did you all know that? It costs $1 million. Do you know how much is involved in paying the expenses for children? Right? Think about it. That's why we should love our parents, and our children should love us, because it's a labor of love, truly. Right? Because you have to feed, clothe, pay for all the extracurriculars, pay for all the stuff they want to do, right? And we love them and we want to see them happy and fulfilled, so we do it, right? But it costs a lot, and it's time off from work, and people have other things that you want to do. You don't just want to be a mom. You are a wife if you are married. If you're not, some mothers today are not. I wasn't. I was divorced. But you want to advance in your career because it's going to be more for you. It's going to be better for you. It's fulfilling, and plus it pays you, so you'll have a better quality of life. So you're not going to have children. Plus, the available pool of men to have children, men are looking at it the same way. I think most guys would probably be like, okay, you can stay home and have babies. But a man is still looking at how much longer. That is chaining him, because he too has to what? He too has to work to provide for more children. Think about your grocery bill. This guy on here says he has 6 children. What do you do for a living? I want to ask, what's your grocery bill like? So it's more expensive today. Was it expensive in our parents' time and our grandparents' time? Yeah. But I think they looked at it in a different way. They looked at it altruistically, like, I'm doing this because I want to have more people around me. I certainly could see that in my mother's case. When she was dying, her 4 children were standing around her bed. The rest of us were looking at each other like we barely made 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like, dang, this is thin. I remember looking at myself and saying, that's all you did? It's just 2? And I look at how much it costs. I look at my sweet little Anna, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, child, you don't know how much it costs what it costs to bring you here. Right? Don't you all see that? Don't you all say that to your children? Don't you all say that to your kids? Don't you ask them that? Children are lacking tribal mentality. Yep. Children are our investment for when we're old and weak. I agree with you. A friend of mine wrote a book years ago. You're going to find this interesting. He called it Parents. And he's of Indian descent, right? He's a physical therapist. And he said in his work in healthcare, he discovered that pay rent, the word parent, means pay rent. He said, as a parent, we're paying rent for when we're older. So you raise up your children in the hope that when you become old, they're there to help you. That is also not necessarily true. It's because our government is big and greedy, seriously. Right? And he said, and it's true. But most of the times in today's world, you go to college, you can't get a job at home, so you have to move away from home to get a job. You know what that causes? It's severing the ties that connect you to your parents. So you have to look at it now that child is not going to live near you. So as you age, you won't have that infrastructure to take care of you. You're going to have to go into a retirement facility, is a nice way to put it. I digress. Anybody put me in that, we're going to have an issue. I swear to God. Because some of those places, they do not take care of people. I'll stay in my own home until they take me out. I swear. I'm not doing it. I'm not going into one of those. Because they ill-treat you and mistreat you. And so I think people just say, you know what, it's better if I just die, because you don't have a choice. You don't have anyone. Your children live in another state. So the society has changed. Because you can't, when you graduate from college, you can't find work where you are. And that is true. That is a truism. These are the factors that are impacting fertility. And these are the factors. So the person moves away. She moves away. What infrastructure and support system does she have for when she has a child? When she has a child, babies get sick. Small children become sick. Up until they're 10, baby, it's a iffy walk. Make up in your mind to be available, because they're going to get sick. They're going to get a cold. They can't go to school. They're sick, right? And what happens is, what's the infrastructure? You can't drop them off at grandma. You can't take them to mom and say, hey, mom, can you babysit? Let me drop the baby off. Let me drop the child off. Can I just drop Johnny off or Ashley off? You know, mom lives in a whole other thing. So she has to stay home eventually. That's it. So some people sig you into, let me work from home, until you're out of the office politics. You're outside of the mainstream. So they start finding other things for you to do. Before you know it, you're out of the workforce. It's for women today, it's one of the considerations. And you're like, I went to law school. I went to medical school. I have my engineering degree. And now what am I going to do with the rest of my life after the baby's born? I'm going to stay home when I could contribute to our family's finances and encourage children, and plus what it takes to raise children and send them to college. It is astronomical what it takes to send them to college. So guess what? We both have to hit it and go work. So guess what you're not going to do is have too many children. We regret it later, because then later in hindsight is 2020, we're like, dang, we could have done this better. Maybe we didn't have to have that nice big house. Maybe we didn't have to trade in our cars every 2 years. Maybe we didn't have to buy that newest iPad or that newest iPhone or whatever. But in the moment, this is what it takes. And these are, when you think of this, the real question is not, it's the impact on our social services. Because if there are not enough people who are working to pay taxes, then where will the revenue for the government come from? Who will be building the bridges? Who will be working in the hospitals and the hotels, right? Who will be building those buildings? Who will be mastering those? Robots? Robots are going to replace the human race? This is what we are talking about. This is the crux of the matter. So when you look at it, it's not just, oh, well, if it works for me, because it works for me, then that means it's true everywhere. That's not true. Go ask any of your sisters, female friends, or so on. Matter of fact, you're in an online community. Just ask how many women have had to leave work because of a pregnancy. You would be amazed. And this is why those of us who still have a mom or a dad, after this conversation, you're going to pick up the phone and call them, especially if they were good. They took care of you, sent you to school. Yeah? Call them. Because now you're seeing that it was a sacrifice. And when you go home, you look at your little children and you make sure they know that you love them. That's why you're doing this for them. So they grow up with some appreciation for you and they don't park you in a nursing home. If you think the government is short on money, I never said the government is short on money. And I agreed with, I didn't say we can't afford it. The government of the United States is not short on money. Don't get it twisted here. You think I'm naive? Is that what you think? Why do you think I'm naive? You think I'm doing this because I'm naive? Mm-mm. You think I think the government is short on money. Are you kidding me? The government does not want to spend the money on what we want them to spend it on. They spend it on their projects that they think they need. But when it comes to issues that advance social causes, the government is like, nah, we ain't into that. That's not what my focus is. That's not what I want to spend my money on. The government of the United States will never be broke. That's a lie. The government creates money and it prints money when it wants it. So now you know, that's how it works. They want some more money, they go print some. The government is not broke. If you think that's what I think, then you have slightly mistaken me. And I dare say maybe you thought because I'm, a woman or something that I don't understand. I have way more understanding of the complexities of our financial system than I care to disclose in this conversation. I'm focused on this specific issue, and it's highlighting an issue that you probably have not thought about. Yes, if we don't have enough people to pay taxes, that is a consideration. You need to go get the facts. You need to expand your idea. You're looking at, you were in the military. How many years have you spent outside of the military? How many years? Answer that question. My brother is retired Navy. And he spent over 23 years. When he came out into civilian life, it took him a while to adjust, right? Even though they took him through all the programs and so on, it took him a while. It took him a while. And I remember telling him just before he retired, I said, it works different than it does in the military. And he's like, no, this story. I said, nope, it doesn't work that way. So you're looking at it from a controlled point of view through the military's eyes. You're still thinking as if you're in the military. That's not how it works in the real world. What I need to do is to post the link to this issue so you can read what social scientists are saying. Often, part of the problem is that we don't accept the science. I'm giving you the facts. You don't have to like it. You can disagree with it all you want, but the facts are the facts. You see what I'm saying? It's not what you think or what I think. It's what the facts and the data is telling the scientists who spend years studying this and come up with the facts. What I'm finding in America today is people don't like science. People dispute the science as if in disputing the science, You're going to deny that it exists. Climate change is not a scientific homo jobo stuff they make up. The global fertility crisis, this has been going on from the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s. This is not new. They've been talking about it. And they could see where this day and time would come. You got to read the science, my friend. Watch a little less of some shows and watch some more National Geographic, right? Read more of the social sciences. Don't just throw away stories that are in the New York Times or the Washington Post. You can skip the political stuff if you want to and get to the facts that empower us with knowledge. I'm going to post the link while I'm speaking with you on this, because apparently there's more to the story than meets the eye. Because where did I put it? I'll post the story on it, because it's crazy to me that you're totally missing the facts. Here it is, the global fertility crash. I'm going to post the story. It's on Bloomberg. So I'm going to post this article right as we're speaking, just so you can see it, because maybe you think that we are making stuff up, because this is just something. This is going to be one of those conspiracy theories. Is that how you folks put it? Here it is, the global fertility crisis. I just tweeted it. So it's going to appear on your timeline. Read it and get the facts. Because you're looking at it from a different perspective. We got to look. Sometimes we are impacted by our own environment and our own biases and prejudices, and it limits our understanding and our capacity to read a situation in its entirety. Do you see what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to step outside of yourself and look at it from another perspective and look at it in the big picture. In the big picture, your military or retired military with 6 children worked perfectly for you. You were in the military. Everything was handed there for you. Your wife didn't have to work. It was all controlled. But if your wife had worked in the real world, she would have had a different kind of experience. And she most likely would tell you that. Do you see what I'm saying? So fighting with me and disagreeing with me is not the issue. It's not going to tear down the facts. It's not going to dispute the facts. So I just posted the link to the article, right, on the global fertility crash. I want everyone to read it. You need to, because you need to be empowered. We don't, on this program, on this podcast, I talk about the issues that matter, because they do. Because we need to have an expansive look at the world. I can't just continue to look at the world through my microscopic look. I grew up in a whole different country. What we were told is vastly different from what happens here, right? They gave us a worldview of what a population. I mean, some of the stuff we're talking about, climate change now, they've been talking about it from the 1980s. You call it climate change now. They've been talking about this stuff was going to happen from the 1980s. This was what scientists were saying. So you can't dispute that. Scientists sit down and study data. That's all they do. Talk about real data miners. That's what they do. They take studies upon studies and read it. Have you ever been around an engineer? An engineer thinks in terms of process. If you have an engineer in your family, ask him to plan Thanksgiving dinner. Oh my God, it would blow your mind. I think it would drive you crazy, because an engineer thinks, why? Why does this happen? If I do this is going to happen. An engineer thinks in terms of process. People think differently. It depends on where you're coming from. So I see your background from the military. How long have you been outside of the military? How long have you been in the wider society to see how it functions? Right? We know the government is not broke. The government wants to think, we make the money. We own the money. The government owns the money. So if they need monies to do something, they're going to make the money to do it. The government is not broke. And don't think that I think so. And the government knows that I think so. Don't think so. Nobody believes that. They choose what programs based on their agenda and what they think is best and most fruitful for the society and the country at the time. Those are the programs they fund. So every administration has its priorities, its own engagements, right? And its own agendas. So it chooses programs and fund those programs based on what it thinks. We don't really think the government is broke. Thank you. The government only cares about, of course. What else? Why would the government care about us? The government cares about the continuance of the government because they're looking at it from a different perspective. If they don't care about how the government operates, there won't be any society. That's sometimes what we miss. The government holds it together. So they only think about the perpetuation of the government. Why do you think political parties fight for control of the government? They're fighting for control of something that is worthwhile, isn't it? Something that is fruitful and something that is highly beneficial to those involved and engaged. You don't want me to talk about politics. We could go to town on that. That's why I don't talk about politics. You'd be surprised. I've been studying this for years, my friend. I didn't just get here. I'm not your Jane come lately. Okay? I'm not a Jane come lately. Trust me. Those who know me, they know. They'll tell you. Right? I'm not Jane come lately. Before I come to you to talk about something, I have read it and studied it. And if I don't feel that I know enough about it, I'm probably just going to mention it and skirt around it. But trust me, we need to look at this whole thing in a whole different context. You have to think outside of me and my 6, me and my 4, me and my 2. You have to think about it. What would happen in some parts of the country right now? For instance, there are wildfires in California. That's a question I've been asking. I had to go do some research to find, guess what? It really is climate. It really is climate. And they have a complex system of who owns the water rights in California. So they're distributing it to the farms. So sucks to be the people. So they're impacted by climate. The whole thing is the climate. Like, you really don't have any control over it. It's dry and arid land. It's a desert in the first place. Nobody shouldn't really have lived there, but they like the weather because other parts of California, they fare better than Southern California. Do you see what I'm saying? I had to go and say, really? That's why? So that's why there's no water. That's why the water table is affected. They can't grow trees, and the trees dry up because there's no water under the water table. This has been going on for over 100 years. It didn't just start happening, right? But I like your feedback. I like the discourse. It's healthy. Yeah, it's healthy. It gives us something to talk about. So tomorrow I'm going to talk about something else. And I think I want to hear your perspective, my friend. Yes, I want to hear from you. Let me see what your name is. I want you to come back tomorrow. Jesse Lamar. I need you to come back tomorrow. I want to talk about tomorrow the commutation of sentences in Oklahoma, the non-drug offenses. I really want to hear from you because I want to hear what you think as an ex-military guy. That's an interesting conversation. I probably am going to invite one of my cop friends to come on and give a perspective from a cop's point of view. What do you all think about that? Right? Oklahoma commuted 400 sentences. Actually, the number is 526 sentences this past Monday. That's a lot of people, but there were non-violent and drug offenses. I've always felt like people smoking weed and taking coke, that's your problem. You're ruining your body. I don't think you should go to jail for that. I think you should go to jail for robbing people, murdering people, holding up a bank, holding up somebody's business, coming into somebody's house, raping, sexual assault, right? Assaulting people. You're walking down the street and somebody attacks you while you're at the mall or something like that. That's what people need to go to jail for, right? But smoking weed, seriously? Right? But we have a problem. I need you to read that article on the global fertility crash. How many of you promise you're going to read that? Raise your hands. We need to read it because we need to see where this is going. And we need to understand it because all the wildfires in California, think about it. You want to talk about all the wildfires in California, those folks who can't rebuild because 340,000 people lost their insurance coverage. That means they can't rebuild. If they don't have the money in the bank to go rebuild a house, sucks to be them. Where are those people going to go? They're going to leave the area, aren't they? Exactly. They're going to leave the area. What is going to happen in that area? How long before that area is restored? 10 to 15 years? When the land slowly gets back to normal? Who owns the water rights that is under the water table, that is sucking the water out? So the water is not flowing under the water table to make the trees grow, so the trees won't catch on fire. Think about that, right? I should post that article that I found about the California wildfires. about the climate in California. Why? It makes you sit back and wonder. I live in Michigan, right? And here I learned recently that for every gallon of water that I use, 288 gallons fall from the sky. I probably don't want to tell my friends in California, right? Why does California only have wildfires? That's the problem. The Central Valley. The Central Valley. They have a Mediterranean climate. And because of the air, when it comes in, it leaves the atmosphere dry. Dude, I was so shocked. I'm like, it's that simple. It leaves the atmosphere dry. And then the winds come across with the dry air. Added to that, you got to look at, so when the rains do fall, where does that water go? Who owns the water catchment rights? Think about that. It's distributed to large farmers first. So there's very little water that's left. They also found out that people who live in the city actually use less water than the large farms do. So the large farms do it. And California has this funny law that called water rights. So if you live near the water and you own land near the water, you own the rights to the water. The rights are not transferable. So let's say your family owned the land 80 years ago and you sold the land. Well, you sold the rights to the water. So now the people who own that land near the water, they own the rights to the water. It's crazy. It's crazy. That is why California has wildfires. And the wildfires, I found out, were not taking place within the urban area of Los Angeles. It was taking place in the suburban communities that were 2 hours out, 2.5 to 3 hours out, right? Think about that again for a second. So those folks are the ones who are paying it. So there's no water out there. There's no rainfall. There hasn't been rain there for a while. And I'm like, y'all want some rain from Michigan? Hi. 288 gallons falling from the sky per person. Our population here is only 9 million. Multiply that. Oh, we have too much water. But you know what? And as a matter of fact, I read a report that says by 2050, Michigan will become a destination. You know where else I found out is having issues that you don't see much on the news? Canada. So much so that Canadians are looking at states within the United States that they could come to, that they refer to as destination points. Guess who factors into one of them? Michigan. I was like, you know what? When we go up northern Michigan, we need to put up a big fence that says, if you're coming over here because of water, no, we don't want it. And I love Canada and Canadians, but I'm like, I think I want to keep my water. So for me, who thought that when it comes time for retirement, I would move to the south? No, I ain't going nowhere. I'll just do like all the seniors here do. You know, on days when it snows and stuff, I just won't go out. And now you can have your prescriptions delivered and your meals delivered and, you know, your groceries delivered. Heck, I'll be fine. I ain't moving. I used to think, oh, when I retire, you know, I want to move somewhere. Well, not anymore, because warm climates don't have water. Right? I got to go. I have a 12:30. I have a 12:30 appointment, so I got to go. Right? Can you believe it? This has been interesting. I need you, my friend, Jesse Lamar. I need you to come back tomorrow and talk about that, because we had such an interesting, you made this lively and livened it up a bit. Thank you for your contribution. But I'm going to show you, post the article, the link to that California wildfires article. I'm going to post it for you to see it. It will blow your mind. You will just keep clicking on link after link after link until you sit back and say, wow. It's the stuff we don't think about, because what happens is when we go on our timelines, we're just so busy reading the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, and we're not paying attention to the issues that matter. But now when you look at what's happening in California, I think all of us are like, oh my God, there's something is more seriously wrong than we initially thought, right? Something, right? So thank you so much for joining me. Come back tomorrow. This is Harriet Cammock with Down to Earth. I had the time of my life today. So please make sure you come back and join us. And certainly subscribe to our podcast. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great Wednesday. Be blessed. See you tomorrow. Hey, this was interesting. Thanks so much. I am having tea. I'm such a tea drinker. I literally